Cost of Victory, Book 1 of the Unseen Scar series by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 3. The superintendent might look upon Ferdinand's sins as benign, but his cousin, his prince, knew perfectly well what he deserved. Anticipation twisted the tinkerer's gut into knots. Even his mints weren't enough to keep it calm. The crowd was formidable, but it wasn't difficult for the skeleton to spot his cousin. Zephyr stood out like a golden beacon of promised relief. If he knew how many you'd killed, he'd punish you properly, unless he applauded you like everyone else. He wouldn't do that. He values life. Unlike you. Unlike me. Murderers value nothing. Drawing in a sharp breath, Ferdinand realized people like him shouldn't exist. Too late, isn't it? I don't know how to fix that. Tripping 5 feet from Zephyr, Ferdinand knelt, head down, and addressed his cousin. Paying homage wasn't common practice on the islands, but for Ferdinand, his prince would always be his prince. Regardless of what the islands were set up for, he could never set that aside. Despite his eye twitching, Zephyr turned a smile to his companions. He tapped a thumb to his cheek and pointed it outward. Well, my friends, it seems he's back. Please give me a moment with my little cousin. Denalia scrunched her nose at Zephyr, straight black hair falling to frame her lovely face and emphasize the beauty of her deeply tanned copper skin. Rich, dark eyes shot his prince a knowing look. Like his cousin, she was an athlete, a fighter, and a formidable one. Like Zephyr, she was 3 years older than Ferdinand. See you inside. With a single command, Zephyr led him to a secluded spot, a small clearing nestled in a wooded area. Once there, Ferdinand dropped one knee again. My prince. You disappear for 3 months, then come walking up like you've been here the entire time? The golden-skinned prince tapped his knuckles against his chin before jerking them downward. Ferdinand nodded. The strain in Zephyr's words warned him to avoid eye contact. But he deserved worse than what was coming to him. Simply looking up, connecting with those onyx eyes, would add to what he'd earned. Even your cousin can't stand looking at you. Golden Hand shot out a gesture Ferdinand knew too well. Depending on the context, it could mean necessary consequences, or it could mean death. Both were fitting. All I have to do is let him see my sins. He'll punish me as I deserve, my prince. He knows justice. I apologize, my prince. I've not forgotten what you've held off on. Evil child, is their punishment sufficient for your wicked soul? Looking at his hands, Ferdinand couldn't see the blood, but he could feel it, smell it, and when he closed his eyes, it was always there. He was drenched in it. I wasn't talking about that. It irritated Zephyr. Everything about Ferdinand did. As his younger cousin groveled at his feet, he felt himself grow hotter. The few words the skeleton spoke irritated him, grating on his nerves. The sounds, the selfishness they conveyed, angered the prince to shaking. Stop it. Why won't you try overcoming your selfishness? But you're right. It's best to do things in order, isn't it? When Zephyr grabbed the skeleton's shirt and lifted, Ferdinand finished standing under his own power, keeping his head down. Reaching back, Zephyr readied a fist, only to have a dozen knives tear through his gut. Doubling over with a groan, he gritted his teeth against the pain. Ferdinand lunged forward. What's wrong? Are you unwell? Shoving his younger cousin back, Zephyr forced himself to straighten. You even got out of this. Out of what, my prince? Frustration accentuated every motion of the prince's hands while his mouth searched for words. You leave on some extended vacation while that disease works its way here, and you can't even be grateful for that. But a cure. It was announced and distributed. Ferdinand recoiled instinctively when their eyes met. Unforgivable sin danced in those clear blue crystals. That look. It contorted Zephyr's face. Fire raged in the prince's onyx eyes, and he threw a punch. He felt Ferdinand's nose break. Unappreciative. What right does someone like you have to be here? Just once could you show a little gratitude? Just because the cure kills the virus doesn't mean it fixes the damage. Everything froze. What little color Ferdinand had vanished before green set in. The skeleton covered his ears and shook his head, lips mouthing something Zephyr didn't catch. That look filled Ferdinand's face, the one which epitomized his little cousin's selfishness. It didn't matter how hard the prince tried. He could never find any other way to describe it. Those eyes held pure selfishness. Zephyr growled, unleashing a barrage of punches to his cousin's upper body. He didn't give Ferdinand a chance to recover. How many times have I tried? Can't you think of anyone other than yourself? I'm so tired of this. As Ferdinand staggered back in front of his prince, Zephyr shot a foot through his gut, knocking him halfway across the clearing. Just like propriety demanded, the skeleton forced himself to his feet again. He'd continue standing until his body gave out. Ferdinand whispered in a language Zephyr didn't understand. Or he didn't understand the words. But the emotion, it enraged the prince further. The mass of students was the only thing distracting Oya from the 5 glowy orbs floating in her peripheral vision. Those orbs had followed her for a while, and didn't seem to be causing any trouble, so she'd enjoy the chaos swarming around her. The longer Oya watched students amble into the room, the more she came to understand the enormity of it. The ratio of seats to people was a bit overkill, yet they arranged themselves into 6 distinct groups. Since she didn't belong to any particular group, Oya decided to enjoy some sun. Ferdinand would tell her anything she needed to know. Once outside, she realized others weren't where they were supposed to be either. A grin brightened Oya's face when she saw her friend. But someone was with him. Ferdinand didn't look happy, neither did he look scared or angry or sad. He knelt there expressionless, like a statue, with a face carved to reflect whatever emotions the observer expected to see. All the while, a smaller boy tenderized her friend. She didn't understand the words he was yelling, but a blind man could see the hate in his eyes. "Who are you, little boy?" Whoever he was, her friend was deeply connected to him. Few connections extended from Ferdinand's chest. The handful her friend had were faded and gray, save a single yellow one, but the string connecting these two, on Ferdinand's side it was a royal purple, but on the golden boy's end it was complex. Red glowed angrily, while black swirled around it, and a strange shade of blue sprinkled the length. This wasn't just an unbalanced relationship, it was confused and bitter and painful. What's going on? Not only was Ferdinand not defending himself, he didn't look like he wanted to. The ending blow was a knee to the gut. Ferdinand tried getting back up, but he was down after this. She heard the boy say something she wasn't sure was common, while flinging his hands around. Kicking Ferdinand in the gut once more, her new enemy walked away. Ferdinand lay on the ground, fighting for breath. She couldn't leave him like this, but she had a bigger fish to fry, and didn't know where to take him anyway. Turning, she went back to the crowd of students. The meeting was in full swing when Oya slipped back into the auditorium. An impressively tattooed man stood on the stage holding a box. 6 older students stood around it, awaiting further instructions. It seemed this man was in charge, only he didn't react to my words on the beach. That was something she'd figure out later. John sat near the middle. The rows behind and in front of him were filled. Why, with all the available seating, is everyone right next to each other instead of spreading out? But there wasn't anything she could do about it. Not a soul noticed her walk along the backs of the chairs to reach him. Even John didn't realize she was there until she was sitting on his lap. The interesting colors consuming his face nearly made her laugh. Turning Ferdinand red was a simple task. But John, I didn't know you could blush. He stumbled on the word she blocked with a hand. Just loud enough for him to hear, she whispered Ferdinand's name in his ear, then got up and headed for the exit. It took a minute, but John eventually jumped up and followed. Taking his arm, she dragged him to her injured friend. Instead of sprawled out on the ground, Ferdinand now sat against a tree. She gave the boy a moment to see the skeleton's pain, then shoved him into the clearing, before disappearing. Now to track down her prey. The boy with golden skin was a good way into the wooded area, taking advantage of a small patch of sunshine. Approaching like a shadow, she grinned, whispering in her native Ondo, "Got you, little dog." He didn't hear her, of course. As far as the world was concerned, she didn't exist right now. Coming up from behind, she hit him with a well-aimed strike to the head. The beast only stumbled, dazed, so she threw her fist again. This time he crumpled. She watched his unconscious body hit the ground. "Next time I'll use a rock." "Let's have some fun, shall we?" She plopped down on his stomach and grabbed his head. "Now, tell me about you." Reaching into his mind, she tore mercilessly through everything, hoping it hurt. Ferdinand banished the pain from his face the moment John came into view. "You're supposed to be at the assembly." Those words were weaker than expected. Pathetic. John frowned. I could say the same. The slightest motion sent pain shooting through Ferdinand's body. "It's a pointless assembly, and you know it. It makes everyone happy. Is that so pointless? Couldn't we all use some happiness right now?" Once John got closer, Ferdinand's bleeding nose and cut lip became apparent. A gash was oozing on his cheek. Alarmed, John shot forward. "What happened?" Looking up, Ferdinand smiled at the lower branches. "I fell." "From the tree? Why were you climbing a tree, you moron?" "I wondered what it was like." A cough forced its way out, nearly bringing Ferdinand to tears. "I'm taking you to a healer." "No, you're not." It wasn't an argument. It was a firm statement of fact. "I'm so close to losing the voice. I'm so close to ending the pain. I'm so close. I won't let you ruin it." "That's not good enough," he screamed at the screen. "Ferdinand, I won't talk to someone who's yelling at me. Her voice was easily crosser than his, only it wasn't raised. I've done everything I can. Sometimes a no is a no. So, till I call and let you know otherwise, that's your answer. People are dying. Just because you don't know them, can't see them, doesn't make them any less real, doesn't make them any less important or needed. It was hard to say what hurt worse, that memory or his body. Take me to my lab. You need a bed. My lab. Ferdinand. I'm tired. The skeleton forced back the next cough, which was as painful as letting it come. But he deserved to suffer. It was the least he could do. The least he owed them. Unhappy and protesting, John acquiesced, half carrying his ally the entire way. The storage closet stood at the back of Ferdinand's lab. The gent converted it into something short of a living area. The denta just eased the skeleton onto the stuffed sack when Ferdinand reached for a flat metallic disc. It was an invention the rest of the island and most of the world mocked. A bony finger activated the disc after placing it against his scrawny chest. A minute later, the light flashed red a dozen times, then green. What does the medical disc say? John asked while the skeleton looked at the results. All he remembered was red meant bad. Just how much was wrong? It says I'm fine. You can leave me and let me rest. A small smile tugged at Ferdinand's lips, sparking John to snatch it away before the skeleton could delete the results. Give it back! You're not fine. Stop grabbing things from me. Ferdinand shook uncontrollably and was translucent. You aren't 5 years old anymore. Then stop lying to me. Your job is to be as annoying as you want about food, not... Coughs seized the gent, forcing tears out. At the end of his rope, Ferdinand tried one more time. I'm asking you to give it back. Please respect my wishes. A new hand grabbed the disc, this one golden brown. Where did you come from? John gasped at the sight of those wild green eyes. It looked like his ally had the same question. He hadn't heard the door open, but she managed getting into places she oughtn't at the hospital. Here was probably a piece of cake. Words John couldn't hope to identify left her mouth. Ferdinand nodded, gasping at the motion. More alien words came, followed by common. Miss Oya, he helped me find your language. This was when something clicked. The ease with which those foreign sounds danced off of Ferdinand's tongue was so natural, John hadn't noticed before now. Wait, you can already speak it? It's only been 2 months. Mind your own business, John, Ferdinand scolded weakly, batting away something near his ear. Randomly messing with the buttons, Oya made a small screen appear on the back. She studied it intently before asking a question. A pained gasp folded Ferdinand in half, but he managed a response. They continued back and forth until Oya removed a screen from her bag and handed it to John. She then said something and gave him a wink. Looking down, John read, You can read as I talk. The program looked amazing. How long have you had this? I created it shortly after... I found her language, Ferdinand admitted feebly. This would be useful for her suitemates and everyone else. No, Oya interrupted. It's mine. I'll keep it till I'm ready to share. What does that mean? Leaning her face in until her nose touched John's, she grinned and winked. Wait, she understands us? As long as we don't speak too quickly, something Ferdinand wasn't in danger of doing at the moment. Order and pronunciation is weird in common. She looked at the disc. Go get something to clean his face. What? If you talk to anyone, I'll hurt you. John never met anyone who made him this nervous, but that childish threat sent chills down his spine. Taking her words seriously, John left for the first aid kit kept in his lab 2 doors down. It didn't take long to retrieve it and start preparing the sterile cloth, which she snatched from him. No, I've got it. You don't need to care for him. Waving her hand dismissively, Oya set to work blotting Ferdinand's lip, moving on from there. When she was done, she let John patch the gash with the goop he'd readied for the purpose. Ferdinand, she got both of their attention. The next time you fall out of a tree, I'm showing him the results. Horror filled Ferdinand's face. You can't do that. I can, and I will. I won't watch a friend die from their own stubbornness. Alarm filled every ounce of John as he looked between them and the screen. Sleep. Oya covered Ferdinand's eyes and didn't remove her hand until his body relaxed and his breathing became shallow. Someone's waiting for you. Someone's waiting? What is she talking about? A pier stretched over an endless purple ocean. Before Ferdinand sat an old man slumped in a folding chair, wrought-in slacked hands and floppy hat pushed far enough forward to nap. The man looked like part of a painting. Was this the afterlife? But a place like this didn't exist for a murderer like him. Footsteps echoed as he made his way to the older gentleman. Seems I've forgotten my fishing rod. Reaching down, the man grabbed at thin air. A rod materialized in his hand and he offered it. That face. It was a little too perfect to be human. Happens I have a spare. You're welcome to it. I'm afraid the fish aren't biting much. That's fine. Ferdinand took the rod and sat on the pier next to him. What's your name, son? A friendly smile spread across the man's face. Ferdinand. Ferdinand, huh? It's nice to meet you. May I ask your name? You may call me the fisherman. Ferdinand looked at him thoughtfully. Thank you, fisherman. My pleasure. The fisherman stretched and leaned back in his chair. What's a child doing here when he should be in school? Disappointment filled Ferdinand's answer. I thought I'd be dead, but this feels more like a dream. The man laughed. I guess I'll disappear when you wake up. It'd be nicer if you woke up first. Ah, what makes you think this is a dream? What if we're both real and enjoying this beautiful sunset together? The fisherman asked. It's too beautiful to be real. My life isn't this lovely. Don't you think it should be? Ferdinand shrugged. Well then, what landed you in this predicament, Ferdinand? Excuse me? Bleeding internally while you make your friends watch you die. I did some bad things, Ferdinand stated simply. This is faster than starving to death, at least. Very bad? Ferdinand nodded. Evil? Putting down the rod, the skeleton sighed as he laid back on the pier. Yeah. And you don't want to talk about it? No, I don't. That's fair. The fisherman's smile softened, though right now you've dreamed up an old man who's happy to listen, and isn't going anywhere. One who's eager to ask questions. This elicited another laugh. Well, it's your choice. On one hand, I'm just an old fisherman you've dreamed up. But on the other hand, I'm just an old fisherman you've dreamed up. Ferdinand struggled with that thought. Am I carrying on a conversation with my unconscious? I'm dying now because I killed millions, and hurt even more. Wow, unexpected from someone so young. I'll die as punishment for the deaths I've caused. I don't deserve care when I've denied the same for countless others. Those words shocked the fisherman into momentary silence. That's quite the burden to carry. Ferdinand placed his arms over his eyes to seal in the tears fighting to come. Were you in a war? Ferdinand shook his head. Then why did you kill so many? I didn't mean to, he gasped, voice high. You've been told it's not your fault. How much he hated those words was indescribable. John said that after every nightmare. That only makes it feel worse. A sob escaped his throat as Ferdinand rolled to his side. Beating back what was clawing its way out took everything he had. Sitting quietly, the fisherman waited for the boy to regain control. How about the ones you hurt? Are those connected to the ones who died? I've stolen so many families and friends. Even in the short time I've been back on the islands, everyone's mourning. So many are sick. I see. How about your companions? Did they have part in the deaths or injuries? No. Ferdinand drowned in defeat as he scrunched into a ball. Then, what was their crime? They've done nothing wrong. Confusion filled his words. This is a harsh punishment for having done nothing wrong. What is? Ferdinand rolled to lay on his back again. Being forced to let a friend die when you could easily save him. It's probably the cruelest punishment I know. Those words sunk in deep, forcing despair to the surface. Again he folded his arms over his face, trying to seal everything in. Why did you have to say that? If the cause of all this is hurting people, I'll save you the responsibility of 2 more. It was slipping through his fingers. This was all he had left to give. Ferdinand hadn't come close to atoning for what he'd done. Now the little he could offer was snatched away from him. What more is expected of me? How many people will die because of me? How many will I hurt? How many lives will I destroy? I can't face all that. I don't want any more blood on my hands. But she called me friend. Can I punish an innocent person? What right do I have? Competing forces crushed him, and neither could be satisfied. What do I have to do? The fisherman reached down and poked Ferdinand's chest, only to have his hand immediately smacked away. Did that hurt, son? No, he said as he rubbed at the spot. I see. Getting off his chair, the fisherman knelt beside the skeletal boy. You have a rather nasty wound right there. I don't see anything. If you can't feel it, you won't be able to see it. The fisherman hovered his open palm over the skeleton's chest. It's festering, and the infection is spreading. Those words surprised Ferdinand, but disbelief shortly set in. This was a dream. I don't feel anything. I can clean the wound for you. But not heal it? Ferdinand asked, disinterested. No, this isn't something I can heal, but cleaning it will help things for a little while. This is a dream. Then what can it hurt? Lowering his arms and closing his eyes, Ferdinand answered with a shaky breath. No, I deserve worse than this. Sighing, the fisherman continued on. You don't deserve to feel this way. Yes, Ferdinand said bluntly, I do. Very well, son. The man took Ferdinand's hand, and the sunset faded to black. Pain tore through Ferdinand, escaping in a groan. Blood overwhelmed his tongue and turned his stomach, but the strange dream had ended. Everything was blurry. Sights, sounds, smells, none of it made sense. Somehow he identified the face floating in front of him. Then everything went dark. Seems we get to dance a while longer.